Let me talk to you for a moment. Because if a man doesn't value you anymore, it's not because you're lacking. It's not because you're not enough. It's because he got comfortable. See, when a man knows you'll stay no matter how he acts, something changes. The effort slows down, the respect gets lazy, the appreciation fades, not because he's evil, but because human nature responds to consequences, not words. Now here's the simple trick. Stop explaining your worth. That's it. Stop arguing. Stop over-texting. Stop reminding him how much you've done. Stop begging him to see what he's already seen and chosen to ignore. Because the moment you start explaining your value, you've already lowered it in his eyes. A man doesn't value what he doesn't have to work for. He values what he could lose. So instead of chasing clarity, you choose silence with dignity. Instead of asking for effort, you become unavailable to disrespect. Instead of pouring more love into someone who's giving less, you pull your energy back. And here's what happens next. If he truly values you, he will feel the shift immediately. Your absence will speak louder than your tears ever did. Your calm will scare him more than your anger ever could. He'll either step up or step out, and either way, you win. Because if he steps up, now you know he's capable. And if he steps out, you just saved yourself years of settling. Let me say this clearly. The right man doesn't need reminders to treat you well. He doesn't need threats to show up. And he doesn't need you to shrink so he can feel big. When you stop chasing a man who doesn't value you, you don't lose him. You expose him. And that simple trick, it's not manipulation. It's self-respect. And self-respect always changes the game. When a man stops valuing you, the first place your mind goes is inward. You start questioning yourself. You replay conversations. You wonder if you said too much, asked for too much, or somehow became too much. But the truth is far simpler and far more freeing than that. A lack of value does not come from your worth decreasing. It comes from his comfort increasing. And those two things are not the same. When a man feels secure without effort, he slowly stops trying. Not all at once, not in a dramatic way. It happens quietly. The good morning texts come later. The dates become less intentional. The apologies get shorter or disappear completely. The respect that once felt natural now feels conditional. And because it happens gradually, you often blame yourself for not being patient enough, understanding enough, or loving enough to bring the old version of him back. But effort fades when there is no risk attached to losing you. Human nature responds to urgency and consequence. When someone knows they can show up halfway and still keep full access to your time, your body, your emotions, and your loyalty, effort stops feeling necessary. Comfort replaces curiosity. Security replaces appreciation. And familiarity without boundaries breeds carelessness. This is why trying harder rarely works. When you give more love to someone who is already doing less, you unintentionally teach them that less is acceptable. You send a message that your presence is guaranteed no matter how you're treated. And once that message is received, it becomes very difficult to undo it with words alone. Here's the part many people don't want to hear. A man can admire your beauty, praise your strength, and still not value you properly if he believes you will never leave. Value is not about what he says. It's about what he protects. It's about what he fears losing. When there is no fear of loss, appreciation turns into assumption. This doesn't mean every man who grows comfortable is cruel or intentional in his neglect. Many don't even realize what they're doing. Comfort is seductive. It makes people lazy with things they should be careful with. And unfortunately, love without boundaries creates an environment where neglect can grow unnoticed. Your worth, however, remains untouched by his behavior. Your value does not rise and fall based on how much effort someone else gives you. You were valuable before he met you. You were valuable when he pursued you. And you are valuable even if he no longer shows up the way he once did. His comfort does not cancel your worth. The danger comes when you internalize his lack of effort as proof that you need to do more to be chosen. That's when self-respect starts to erode. You start overgiving, over-explaining, overcompensating. And in doing so, you move further away from the very energy that initially drew him to you. Men are not inspired by someone who is constantly available to be disappointed. They are inspired by someone who knows when to pull back, not out of manipulation, but out of self-respect. When effort is required, value returns. When access is unlimited, appreciation fades. This is why stepping back can feel terrifying, but powerful. Not to punish him, not to test him, but to realign the dynamic. When you stop filling in the gaps he leaves, you give him the opportunity to either rise or reveal. And that clarity is a gift, even when it hurts. If he values you, your absence will register. He will feel the shift. He will recognize what he took for granted. And if he doesn't, then what you lost was not love, but an illusion of it. Either way, you regain something priceless, your dignity. Remember this. You do not have to perform to be valued. You do not have to convince someone to see your worth. The right kind of respect appears naturally when effort is required and boundaries are honored. Comfort may dull appreciation, but self-respect restores balance. So if a man has stopped valuing you, don't rush to fix yourself. Pause, observe, protect your energy. Your worth has not diminished. He has simply become too comfortable to see it clearly. The moment you start explaining your worth, something subtle but powerful shifts in the dynamic between you and the person you're trying to convince. What begins as a desire to be understood quietly turns into a need to be validated. And that need, when sensed by the wrong person, weakens your position. Not because you aren't worthy, but because worth that must be argued starts to sound like a debate instead of a truth. Begging rarely looks like begging at first. It disguises itself as long messages, carefully chosen words, emotional explanations, and repeated attempts to make someone see you. You tell yourself you're just communicating. You're just being honest. You're just trying to fix things. But over time, those explanations begin to carry a tone of desperation rather than clarity. And once that tone enters the conversation, power quietly slips away. Power in relationships is not about control. It's about self-respect. It's about knowing when your words are adding value and when they're being used to compensate for someone else's lack of effort. When you over-explain, you give the other person permission to stay passive while you do the emotional labor for both of you. You start managing their feelings, interpreting their silence, and justifying their behavior on their behalf. The truth is, someone who truly values you does not need a detailed presentation of why you matter. They feel it, they show it, they protect it. When respect is present, communication flows naturally and explanations are received with care. When respect is absent, explanations become ammunition, not understanding. Each time you justify why you deserve kindness, consistency, or basic consideration, you send an unintended message that these things are negotiable. You frame your needs as requests instead of standards. And once standards are lowered to requests, they can be ignored without consequence. There is also a quiet exhaustion that comes from constantly trying to prove your worth. It drains your energy. It chips away at your confidence. You start measuring yourself through someone else's response rather than your own values. And that's when you lose sight of who you were before you started asking to be chosen. Over-explaining often comes from fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of abandonment, fear of being seen as too much. But shrinking yourself to be digestible does not create safety. It creates imbalance. The more you explode on, the less the other person has to reflect. The more you talk, the less they have to act. Silence, when used with dignity, is not weakness. It is clarity. It signals that you know what you bring to the table and you are not here to convince anyone to eat. Silence creates space for accountability. It forces the other person to sit with their choices instead of hiding behind your words. This does not mean you stop communicating your needs once. Healthy relationships require honest conversations, but repeating yourself to someone who has already shown you they are not listening is not communication. It's self-abandonment. The first time you express a boundary is communication. The fifth time you justify it is negotiation against yourself. When you stop explaining, something interesting happens. Either the other person steps up because they recognize the shift, or they step away because they were only comfortable when you were overgiving. Both outcomes bring clarity. And clarity, while sometimes painful, is powerful. Your worth was never meant to be debated. It is not proven through endurance or sacrifice. It is reflected in how you are treated when you stop over-functioning in the relationship. The right person does not require convincing. They require presence. They meet you where you stand, not where you plead. So the next time you feel the urge to explain yourself one more time, pause. Ask yourself if you are being heard or if you are trying to be chosen. Choose yourself first. Power returns the moment you stop arguing for a value that was never in question. Many people believe that if they just explain themselves a little better, choose the right words, or repeat their feelings enough times, something will finally change. They hold on to the idea that communication alone can fix disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional neglect. But the hard truth is this: words without boundaries are just noise. Men, like all human beings, respond far more to consequences than to repeated explanations. Real change does not come from arguments. It comes from action meeting limits. When a man hears the same complaint over and over, but experiences no real shift in access, comfort, or privilege, his behavior has no reason to change. He may listen, he may nod, he may even apologize. But if nothing changes afterward, the message he receives is simple: your words carry no weight. Not because they aren't valid, but because they are not backed by action. Arguments often become emotional outlets rather than turning points. You pour your heart out. You explain how his behavior makes you feel. You hope that this time something clicks, and for a moment it might. He may promise to do better. He may soften. But without consequences, those moments fade quickly and old patterns return. That's because comfort remains intact. There is no cost to staying the same. Boundaries introduce cost. They draw a clear line between what is acceptable and what is not. And more importantly, they define what happens when that line is crossed. A boundary without a consequence is just a suggestion. It sounds good, but it doesn't change behavior. When consequences are consistent, behavior adapts. That is how human nature works. This is why repeated words can actually weaken your position. Each time you argue without changing your response, you teach him that he can wait you owe that if he stays quiet long enough, says the right thing, or offers a temporary apology, everything will go back to normal. Your emotions become predictable, and predictability without enforcement creates disregard. Consequences are not punishments. They are not threats. They are simply the natural result of a choice. If someone chooses not to respect your time, the consequence is reduced access to it. If someone chooses inconsistency, the consequence is distance. If someone chooses to ignore your needs, the consequence is that you stop showing up where you are not valued. This approach feels uncomfortable because it requires restraint. It requires you to stop chasing closure through conversation and start protecting your peace through action. It means allowing someone to feel the absence of what they took for granted. And that absence speaks louder than any argument ever could. When behavior meets boundaries, clarity follows. A man who values you will adjust, not because you argued better, but because he recognizes that the relationship requires effort to continue. He will feel the shift and respond to it. A man who does not value you will resist, deflect, or walk away. And while that may hurt, it also saves you from staying in a dynamic where your words are constantly ignored. There is strength in consistency. Boundaries only work when they are maintained. If you state a limit and then repeatedly cross it yourself, you undo your own authority. This is why consequences must be realistic and sustainable. They are not dramatic gestures. They are quiet, firm decisions that protect your self-respect. Real change is visible. It shows up in actions, not speeches. You don't need to monitor it, remind him of it, or applaud it. When a man changes because he understands the consequences of not doing so, the effort becomes steady, not temporary. Words have their place. Communication matters. But communication without boundaries is incomplete. It leaves the responsibility for change on your shoulders instead of where it belongs. The moment you stop arguing and start enforcing, the dynamic shifts. And in that shift, you discover who is willing to meet you at the level of respect you deserve. Pulling back your energy is often misunderstood as giving up, playing games, or being cold. In reality, it is one of the most grounded and self-respecting choices you can make when effort becomes one-sided. When words are ignored and emotions are taken for granted, silence with dignity becomes a form of clarity. It restores balance in a dynamic that has leaned too far in one direction. Chasing usually begins with good intentions. You want connection. You want reassurance. You want things to go back to how they were, so you reach out more. You initiate conversations. You ask questions that don't get answered properly. You explain how you feel and hope your vulnerability will inspire care. But when only one person is doing the emotional work, that imbalance grows heavier with time. Pleading doesn't create closeness. It creates discomfort. It places you in a position where you are asking for what should be freely given. Each emotional reaction, each long message, each moment of visible frustration reinforces the same message that you are more invested than he is. And when that imbalance becomes obvious, respect quietly fades. Silence with dignity is different. It is not silent treatment. It is not manipulation. It is the decision to stop pouring energy into a place where it is not being received. It is choosing calm over chaos, presence over panic, self-respect over self-abandonment. When you pull back, you stop feeding the dynamic that allowed neglect to grow. You stop filling the gaps. You stop compensating for his lack of effort. And in that space, something important happens. He either notices the absence and reflects on his behavior, or he continues as if nothing has changed. Both responses give you information you need. Emotional reactions often give the other person a sense of control. They know you are affected. They know you will respond. They know they can disappear and return without consequence. Silence, on the other hand, removes that certainty. It interrupts the pattern. It creates room for accountability without a single argument. There is strength in not reacting immediately, in not explaining, in not demanding answers from someone who has already shown you how much effort they are willing to give. Silence allows you to observe rather than chase. It allows you to regain your center. Pulling back also reconnects you with yourself. When you are no longer focused on managing someone else's emotions, you start hearing your own again. You notice how tired you were, how much you were overgiving, how often you ignored your own discomfort to keep the peace. Distance brings perspective, and perspective brings power. If he values you, the shift will not go unnoticed. He will feel the change in energy. He will sense that access is no longer guaranteed. And if he is capable of meeting you with respect, he will move towards you with intention, not excuses. If he doesn't, then silence saves you. It prevents you from continuing to invest in someone who is comfortable with your absence. And that truth, while painful, is far kinder than staying in a cycle of hope and disappointment. Balance in relationships comes from reciprocity, not sacrifice. When one person gives endlessly and the other receives without effort, the connection becomes unhealthy. Pulling back restores equality. It gives the other person the opportunity to meet you where you are, instead of where you've lowered yourself to be accepted. Silence with dignity is not about proving a point. It's about protecting your peace. It's about trusting that what is meant for you will not require you to beg for attention or chase consistency. When you stop reacting and start respecting your own limits, the dynamic either heals or ends. And in both cases, you regain control of your emotional well-being. In a world that encourages constant communication, Choosing silence can feel uncomfortable, but sometimes the most powerful message you can send is the one you don't explain at all. Your absence has a way of revealing truths that words never could. When you step back, when you stop initiating, when you stop carrying the emotional weight of the connection, the dynamic changes immediately. Not because you announced it, not because you demanded anything, but because the space you create forces the other person to respond honestly. Absence removes distractions. It strips away excuses, and in that quiet, true intentions rise to the surface. When you are always present, always available, always forgiving, it becomes easy for someone to stay uncertain. They don't have to decide, they don't have to choose. They can enjoy the benefits of your presence without committing to the responsibility that comes with valuing you. Your consistency allows their inconsistency to survive. And as long as that balance exists, clarity remains out of reach. The moment you pull away, the comfort of indecision disappears. He is faced with a choice: step forward with intention or remain where he is and risk losing you. This is not a test. It is a natural moment of truth. When effort is no longer guaranteed, value becomes visible. If he values you, your absence will feel loud. He will notice the missing energy, the missing warmth, the missing support. He will reflect on his behavior, not because you forced him to, but because the absence creates contrast. What once felt ordinary now feels significant, and in that realization, action follows. He reaches out differently. He shows consistency. He moves with purpose instead of convenience. But if he does not value you, your absence will be met with silence or indifference. He may not chase. He may not ask. He may simply let the connection fade. And while that can hurt deeply, it is also a form of honesty you would never receive through conversation alone. His lack of response is not confusion. It is information. Clarity often feels like loss at first because it ends hope. It ends the fantasy of potential and replaces it with reality. But reality, even when painful, is far kinder than prolonged uncertainty. Staying where you are not chosen slowly erodes your self-esteem. Clarity stops that erosion. Your absence also removes the illusion that love must be proven through endurance. Love is not measured by how much neglect you can tolerate. It is revealed by how someone responds when they realize they might lose you. Anyone can stay when access is easy. Only those who value you will act when it becomes uncertain. There is also empowerment in stepping back. It reminds you that you have a choice too, that you are not waiting to be picked. You are deciding what kind of connection deserves your presence. Absence recenters you. It shifts the focus from his behavior to your boundaries. Walking away emotionally does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop chasing validation from someone who is undecided about you. It means you allow someone to meet you at your level or lose access to you altogether, and that choice is an act of self-respect. When he steps up, you gain confirmation that your value was seen and respected. When he walks away, you gain freedom from a dynamic that required you to shrink to stay. Both outcomes protect you. Both outcomes move you forward. Clarity is a win because it gives you direction. It tells you where not to invest your energy. It shows you whether someone is aligned with your standards or simply comfortable with your presence. And once you have that clarity, you no longer have to guess, hope, or wait. Your absence is not about punishment. It is about truth. And truth, even when it hurts, always leads you back to yourself. Self-respect is not loud. It does not announce itself or demand attention. It is quiet, steady, and deeply transformative. The moment you choose yourself, the entire dynamic of any relationship begins to shift, not because you became colder or less loving, but because you stopped accepting less than you deserve. And that choice forces a response. Either the other person rises to meet you with respect, or the connection begins to fall apart. Both outcomes serve you. When you operate without self-respect, you tolerate things you shouldn't. You excuse behavior that hurts you. You stay silent to keep the peace. You lower your standards to avoid conflict or abandonment. And slowly the relationship becomes unbalanced. One person gives, the other receives. One person adjusts, the other stays the same. This imbalance is not sustainable, and it quietly drains your sense of self. Choosing yourself interrupts that pattern. It is the decision to honor your feelings without apologizing for them. It is the moment you stop chasing consistency and start requiring it. You begin to respond instead of react. You speak less but with more intention. You no longer explain your boundaries repeatedly. You simply enforce them. This shift is often uncomfortable for others, especially those who benefited from your overgiving. They may accuse you of changing, of becoming distant, of being difficult. But what they are really reacting to is the loss of access to a version of you that accepted everything. Self-respect removes that access. When you choose yourself, you stop negotiating your worth. You no longer stay where you feel unseen or undervalued. You trust that love should feel mutual, not exhausting. And in doing so, you raise the standard of how you are treated. Some people will rise to that standard. They will adjust their behavior. They will show up more consistently. They will communicate more clearly, not because you force them to, but because they recognize that being in your life now requires effort. Respect grows when standards are clear and consistently upheld. Others will not rise. They will resist the change. They will pull away. They may even leave. And while that can feel like rejection, it is actually protection. Separation creates space for healthier connections. It removes you from environments that require you to diminish yourself to belong. Self-respect also changes how you see yourself. You begin to trust your instincts. You stop doubting your reactions. You recognize that discomfort is often a signal, not a flaw. You learn to listen to that signal instead of silencing it for the sake of someone else's comfort. This internal shift is powerful because it influences every interaction you have. You no longer chase people who are unsure about you. You no longer tolerate mixed signals. You move with calm confidence, knowing that what is meant for you will not require constant explanation or emotional sacrifice. Choosing yourself does not mean closing your heart. It means opening it wisely. It means allowing love in without abandoning your boundaries. It means understanding that peace is more valuable than potential. The future you are protecting is not just about relationships. It is about your emotional health, your confidence, and your ability to trust yourself. Every time you choose self-respect, you reinforce the belief that you deserve consistency, honesty, and care. That belief shapes the kind of connections you attract and the ones you reject. At the end of the day, everything comes back to one simple truth. How you treat yourself teaches others how to treat you. When you stop explaining your worth, stop chasing attention, stop arguing for basic respect, and start choosing yourself, the entire dynamic changes. Your silence becomes powerful. Your absence becomes revealing. Your boundaries become non-negotiable. And through it all, your self-respect becomes your greatest protection. Some people will rise to meet you when you raise your standards. Others will fall away when they realize they can no longer access you without effort. Neither outcome is a failure. Both are answers. Both move you closer to the life and love that actually align with your value. You were never meant to beg to be chosen. You were meant to be respected, appreciated, and met with consistency. The moment you decide to honor yourself, clarity replaces confusion, peace replaces anxiety, and strength replaces self-doubt. That is how you take your power back. If this message spoke to you, don't ignore it. Let it be the moment you choose yourself differently. Comment below and tell me, what is one boundary you are committing to protect from today onward? Your words might be exactly what another woman needs to read right now.